Hey everybody, we are just getting on the road here for our record store road trip honeymoon. Our first stop is Burlington, Vermont. Looking forward to doing a little record shopping up there today. Yep, so here we go. We're about to hit the road. Okay, good afternoon again, everybody. We are now in sunny Burlington, Vermont. We just got done here at Autumn Records, and it was a really terrific time. The owner, Greg, showed up, and he was just a really nice guy. As far as the selection goes, it's a big store. They've got a lot of jazz. They had some pretty good stuff on the wall. They had a copy of, they actually had 2 copies of Andrew Hill Compulsion original mono. They had a good amount of Japanese reissues, Kings that were decently priced. They had a lot of new reissues, just basically anything that you might be interested in terms of Tone Poet or Blue Note or anything like that. They had a couple big bins of rare first pressing stuff. Nothing I was like super interested in. If the price was right, I might have gotten something out of that bin, but I didn't end up getting anything out of that bin. First thing I'll show you here is this cool record bag. Okay, that's from Autumn Records. Very nice. And this beautiful T-shirt. I guess they just released these. So this reissue that actually my buddy Jeremy was playing at his house on Memorial Day, and we realized how much we loved it. It's a vibraphone with Fender Rhodes from the 70s, right? MPS Records, something I'm not normally familiar with. Michael Nora Quartet, German, and so a really nice reissue of this. Call. Yeah, so this store is highly recommended, very clean. It was a lot of fun digging through here, and now we're on our way to Burlington Records. Okay, well, it is later in the day here in Burlington, Vermont, and Akko and I just got finished at Burlington Records, which is right behind us here. This store was pretty big. When I first walked in, I saw a handful of rare first pressings, Duke Ellington Money Jungle. There was a Liberty mono copy of Blue Train for $250. When I first started looking at that record, I actually was shopping for that record maybe 6-7 years ago, and I felt like if you were lucky, you could get it for like $150. So, you know, post-COVID, that seems like that price isn't totally ridiculous. If my budget allowed it, I would have maybe offered the guy $200 for it if it was clean. The jazz bins, there was a lot of stuff, but Akko thought it was 60-40 new used. I thought it was more like 80-20. I really did not see a lot of used vinyl in there. The prices were a little on the steep side. In all fairness, the new stuff at Autumn and here was pretty pricey. Like I was actually shopping for the classic series Empyrean Isles and Evolution by Gratian Moncourt, but at both stores they were $32 a pop. And I have them in my Amazon cart now, and it's a real shame, but the Hancock is like $24 and the Evolution's like $21. It's really hard to beat that, especially with free shipping on Amazon. So I feel bad, but I got to do what I got to do. I'm on a budget. We're on a budget. That's pretty much it for today. Tomorrow we're heading to Rockport, Mass. to Mystery Train, a store that I visited many years ago, circa 2007. So it'll be fun to go back there for the first time in like 15 years. And tomorrow we are also going to hit Boston. So stay tuned. Okay, we're here in Rockport, Mass, and we just got done at Mystery Train Records, and we had some fun in there. This is an old school proper record store, okay? As much as I enjoyed the experience in Burlington, those were not the old school store experience. And the other thing that I kind of feel like is sad but true about the difference between the old school stores and the newer stores is the prices. I was here in 2007, and it pretty much was as I remembered it. I mean, at that time, like I said, I had a really crazy stroke of luck where I found all these Charlie Parker on dial 78s. They had 78s today, but I didn't end up getting any. They did have some bebop, but I kept turning. I saw like Sonny Stitt, Stan Getz, and Milt Jackson, and I was hoping for Monk or Parker or something like that. It never really happened, unfortunately. So no 78s, but they had a lot of jazz. They had a lot of everything, but they had a lot of jazz. But it was kind of like, without trying to sound too cruel, I mean, it's just like the textbook idea of Junk City. And it doesn't mean that there isn't good stuff to be had, but there's a lot to flip through in terms of stuff that like is not collectible. It's not in plastic sleeves. It's like, the good thing about that was that it was sorted. It was well sorted. So the fact that their like main jazz section was a lot of junk, but it was organized, was good, because you got to flip through it pretty quickly. And we actually found a really cool record in that section, and that record was this one right here. Original pressing of Red Garland, A Garland of Red. And it was an original West 50th NYC address, and VG condition for a really great price. An old school record store price, you could say. Got a few CDs here. I got Steeman, Miles Davis OJC, and Monin, the original 80s CDP with the silver actual disc. These were super cheap, $3 and $4. And I got this really cool Shure stereo test record for $5, and it was clean. So I actually think it's going to work if I want to test the tracking of my stereo cartridges. Also, they totally keep it old school. They do this kind of thing with the receipt. The clerk was playing a lot of eclectic music. He played like sludge metal, and then he went to like early Irma Thomas on Minute. When you go to stores like this, you gotta hunt for the stuff, and we found some pretty cool stuff. So it was fun overall, an overall satisfied visit to Mystery Train. And now we're moving on to Boston, so we will see you there. Welcome back, everybody. We are in Boston, Massachusetts right now. We just headed over from Rockport. This is the first store we hit here, Stereo Jacks Records. Used to be in Cambridge when I used to frequent this place 12, 13 years ago. My brother was going to college at Boston College. They moved up here to, what's it called, Somerville. The store's a little smaller now, I'm sure that was the result of COVID. Yeah, so we happened to catch them at a good time when they had a lot of great jazz. They just got a jazz collection in. A lot of jazz reissues, which I'm always looking for. 70s Blue Label, Blue Notes, OJCs, that kind of thing. Stuff seemed pretty fairly priced. The stuff that they got in that collection was really clean. I had a copy of Art Blakey at the Jazz Corner of the World in my hand, and it was super clean. It was a Blue Label reissue with the RVG stamp. And it was $25, but I decided I didn't really need it. I'm not super familiar with that album, but I thought that was a pretty fair price. Ended up walking out with one record. It is this killer live session of Max Roach with Booker Little and George Coleman and Ray Draper. It smokes. It's got a lot of really up-tempo stuff on there. Max Roach loved to play really fast. Of course, Booker Little could keep up with him. I was just previewing it in the store, and they flip A Night in Tunisia in a very, very fresh, interesting, creative way. It's not really one of my favorite jazz standards, actually, and the way they play it sounds really good. So I was pretty happy to get this one here. So yeah, we're just sticking to a budget, and we're trying to preserve our money for the rest of our trip here, and we're on our way now to Music Research Library, so we'll see you in a minute. Welcome back, everybody. Good afternoon. We are in New Haven, Connecticut. We had a rough time in Boston yesterday. I had fun in Stereo Jacks, and then we proceeded to head towards Nuggets in our car, which is, oh my God, that store I mean, I'd been there before. I mean, it was a mess. They had like 8 rows of like junk jazz. There was a Lexington Ave copy of the Clifford Brown Blue Note record for like $110, and I didn't even look at it, but that was in the bins, but that was it. It was just like junk city. They had no new arrivals. The clerk was staring at his phone the entire time he was in there. I mean, like, it just seemed like they get no business and no new records ever. No one recommended it to me. It was my choice to do that because I had been there when I was younger. I got a copy of Monk's Dream from there, actually, many, many years ago. A nice, clean mono copy of that original. Yeah, so that was a disappointment. And Akko was looking for a place to go to the bathroom, and she couldn't find a place to go to the bathroom. It was just a hot mess. And then it took us like an hour to drive like a half a mile to a music research library, which is in some like neighborhood of Boston. It's in like a residential neighborhood area of Boston. The guy at Stereo Jacks said he thought that they sold more, like they catered more to DJs, like electronic, house, like 12 inches and stuff like that. And I told him, well, my jazz followers recommended it to me. And like after all that time, like going there like an hour, we get to the neighborhood and there's like no parking. All the parking is like residents. I know they do that in Boston now. It's like the street parking is like residential. It's reserved for residents of the neighborhood. And then we drove by and it kind of reminded me of Turntable Lab, which is also catering to DJs, like the look of the store. And at that point, like I was tired. Akko was tired. I was just like, forget this. Let's just go to the hotel. And then we didn't even go. Anyways, we're here in New Haven today. It is Friday. We are at Elm City Sounds. I'd never met Chris before. He introduced himself. Extremely nice guy, into jazz. We had a really nice conversation about jazz. Probably went on longer than my wife wished. While I was there, he recommended a lot of records to me. We're trying to save our money, so we unfortunately didn't buy everything that he recommended to us, but he recommended a lot of great stuff to us. A couple examples of stuff that he had clean copies of. Horace Silver on Epic, the one that was recorded with the Jazz Messengers in 1956. He had a really clean second pressing of that. He had a clean original pressing of the Jazz Messengers Hard Bop on Columbia. He had a couple of like repurposed Prestige 60s reissues. So like he had like Milt Jackson, it was 7003 with Horace Silver. He had like the Prestige 60s Blue Trident label pressing of that was really nice. He wanted 35 for that. He had what was originally Steve Lacy soprano sax on Prestige. He had the Status repackaging of that, which was Steve Lacy with Wynton Kelly. He had that for 40, and that was really clean with the RVG stamp. The record that we got, that Akko found, it's one of her favorites, is a Walt Dickerson record. Here it is. It's Impressions of a Patch of Blue, which I guess was a film. And it's not, I guess, technically the soundtrack to the film, but Akko's pretty picky. She wasn't right away like, oh, I have to have this. She listened to it, and she decided she liked it, so she thought she'd go for it. I listened to it. I liked it a lot. It's a nice recording. It's stereo, nice true stereo. A big surprise was that it has Sun Ra on it. And it's the last recording that Walt Dickerson did before he took 10 years off from jazz from, I guess, around 1965 to 75. The only reason I know this is because I just looked it up on Wikipedia. But yeah, Sun Ra on harpsichord on some of the songs. Okay, that's cool. But yeah, it's really a beautiful recording. He had 2 copies of it. It's on MCA. And I wasn't really convinced that it was going to be a good recording, but it was. It was a really nice sounding recording, not too much reverb. A lot of times when the label wasn't a jazz label, they recorded jazz with tons of reverb, but that's not the case with this record. This is highly recommended. Chris, I think this is a quote from Chris. His store has a beautiful disorganization to it. Not everything's priced, but the upside to a store like that is that it's really laid back and really casual. You can pretty much grab anything you see, and if it's not priced, he'll price it for you. It's a very communal, shopping experience. Probably the most friendly, fun shopping experience I had. Greg was great in Burlington at Autumn, but this was a very different vibe, and Chris and I had a lot of in common. We both go back with hip hop and being musicians, so I got a lot out of it. He made a lot of great recommendations to me. If anything, the store is highly recommended for the camaraderie and the recommendations, and maybe you can find something good if you have time to dig through everything. We are on our way to Allentown, Pennsylvania next, and we will see you there at Double Decker Records. We are continuing on our record store journey here today. It's Saturday. We are in Allentown, Pennsylvania, and we are at Double Decker Records. Earlier today, we were actually at the New Jersey Jazz Record Bash in Edison, New Jersey. It's every year. It was canceled for about 3 years because of COVID. I think this was the first year they were back. I went there. I'd been there before. I figured that they were going to have a lot of 78s, but more like hot jazz pre-war 78s, and they did. They didn't really have a lot of bebop 78s. It tends to attract older collectors that are into 78s and hot jazz and stuff like that. But there were a few tables with modern jazz and LPs, and we found one guy that had a bunch of boxes of pretty good stuff. We actually only ended up getting one record from him, though, on a budget. It was a Prestige Moodsville Frank West record that I've been looking for quite a while. It was actually a British pressing of it, but it had the RVG stamp, so it was the original American mastering. We also got this Charles McPherson Bebop Revisited, which I have seen before, but I've never paid attention to, but Akko pulled it out, and it was really good. It's an original stereo from '64, Blue Trident label with Van Gelder and the Dead Wax, Carmel Jones on trumpet, and Barry Harris on piano, and it's great. It's great. I love that he plays a couple Charlie Parker tunes, a Bud Powell tune, and these hard bop guys playing bebop stuff is pretty hip at that time. Also, Fat Cat was there, Matthew from WKCR. I've met him before, and he was really nice. He had a couple crates of great originals of hard bop stuff like Blue Note, Prestige. He had a earless stereo with Van Gelder Basra, Pete LaRocca, for $250. It was clean. I thought that was a pretty fair price. He had earless stereo Andrew Hill Point of Departure, which was clean. I thought that was a pretty good price. I actually upgraded my Paul Chambers bass on top. It was a Liberty jacket, but the mono Liberty earless Van Gelder vinyl that was near mint. So we had fun at the record fair. I didn't really think that we were going to get as much as we got there. It was fun though. We had gotten some good conversations with people. Anyways, we eventually got over here to Allentown, and we're at Double Decker. This came highly recommended. Pluses to the store, they had a lot of stuff. Their jazz section was well organized. They had the typical new arrival section that is extremely disorganized, no organization at all, just they throw whatever they priced right in the front of it. And you got to look through, usually you have to look through about 50 rock records to find a jazz record, so that's kind of lame, but that's par for the course really with these stores. They had a copy of Clifford Jordan 1565, which is a holy grail, really hard to find. Looked pretty good, and they had it for $1,500. What else did they have? They had an earless mono of Herbie Hancock Taken Off that was $30, and it was pretty clean. I thought that was a pretty good deal, but I don't really feel like I need that. I have the classic series, the 80th anniversary reissue of that I like a lot. They didn't really have a ton of stuff that I was looking for, and we actually didn't buy anything. So this is actually one of the first times on the trip, Akko, that we've come up empty-handed, I believe. But the other issue is that we did spend a lot of time at the record fair, and we have a few stores to hit in Philly now before they close, and two of them close at 5, and it's I think it's maybe 2:30 now. So yeah, it's close to 2:30. So we gotta get on our horse here and head over to Philadelphia, and once we get there, we'll check back in with you, and we'll let you know what we find. Okay, good afternoon once again. We are in Philadelphia now. It's about 4 o'clock, and we're starting here at Brewerytown Beats. Pretty cool place. It's like a big garage, and they got a giant fan going, and it's nice and cool in there and dark. But they had a few jazz rows and kind of not really anything collectible. They had a couple of wall pieces. They had Jackie McLean's Destination Out original mono for $350. The cover was kind of tattered. It had tape on the seams and some ring wear. Seemed like maybe that was a little bit of a high price. Didn't see anything in their crates for jazz. The owner was nice. I think it was the owner. He walked over and explained to me that they had a section that was unpriced but cleaned, and he welcomed me to look through it. They had some cool Parliament Funkadelic originals, but I'm not in the market for that. And then he pointed to another row of jazz that was new that he said was from a good collection, but I didn't really see anything in there that was very collectible. There was a copy of Art Blakey Big Beat original mono that was trashed, and that was probably the closest thing to what I'm looking for. So this was kind of a swing and a miss, but we didn't spend much time, so really no big deal. But we got a few more spots to hit here in Philly, and we're hopeful because there's a few of them, and they've also been recommended. All right, we're headed into the evening here on Saturday in Philadelphia, and we just got done at Milkcrate Café. I bought records from them at WFMU in 2014. I got like a super clean original first pressing mono of Big John Patton's The Way I Feel for $75. And I got a clean first pressing 6-eye mono of Miles Davis Roundabout Midnight on Columbia for I think it was $65. Those were two of the best scores I've ever had. And so I've never forgotten about Milkcrate. And no one recommended them on Instagram, but I knew I wanted to check them out anyways. And they had a lot of great jazz here. We didn't get anything, as we are very picky. We were close, but not quite. Akko saw a sealed original first pressing on Verve of Curtis Amy Mustang. We decided against it. We're not really familiar with it. We want to check it out a little more before we commit to buying it. They had a Liberty Stereo Earless Freddie Hubbard Night of the Cookers Volume 2 for $25, and it was clean. That was a good price. They had a lot of jazz. They had Gravy Train original mono, but Lou Donaldson, but that was a little beat up. They had a Fickle Sonus, New York labels. I think it was stereo. It was pretty clean. It was maybe an ear. It was $150. They had Donald Byrd Freeform. That was $150 on the wall. I think that was the mono. They had Tony Williams Lifetime original. They had a lot of good stuff, and their prices were really good. And they had the grades on the jackets, and they seemed like they were undergrading. Yeah, good prices. Thumbs up all around, despite the fact that we didn't get anything this time. We got a few more places to hit now before they close, so let us go do that, and we will get right back to you. Okay, we are just finishing up at Molly's Books and Records, and it was a good experience, very small. They had a small curated selection. By the way, Milkcrate was very curated and very organized and very clean. We really liked that about Milkcrate. Molly's was also curated and organized. It sounds like they get rare jazz in quite a bit. They had a couple pieces that were pretty nice. They had a copy of Lee Morgan's Search for the New Land that was an earless mono for $125. It was probably VG plus ish. I thought that was a decent price. Other than that, not a ton. They had a few crates of 78s. They had a Miles Davis on Capitol, Boplicity, which I'm actually looking for, but it kind of looked like the grooves had a little bit of wear. It had those grayish lines, so I passed on it. It was $25. But we also ran into Instagram's Jeff Kaufman in there, had a really nice conversation with him. So that was really nice, and he gave us some good tips for shopping in Philadelphia. So we are on our way to the next store, and we got to get to it before 7 o'clock, so we will see you soon. Okay, good afternoon from sunny Washington, D.C. So yesterday we were running out of time at the Philadelphia stores, so we didn't have time to make videos, so I'm just going to wrap up with those now. Sadly, we did not buy anything in Philadelphia. We really enjoyed ourselves shopping at the stores, but for one reason or another, they just didn't really hit the sweet spot for my wife and I at any point. The last couple stores we went to that we didn't review at the stores were Beautiful World Syndicate and Long in the Tooth. But Beautiful World Syndicate was a small store. They didn't have much of anything, which means they didn't have much jazz. But their jazz was curated, and it was really good stuff. They had a great wall. They had a first pressing of Red Garland All Morning Long. They had a 2-eye mono kind of blue for $100, which I was really psyched about until I heard it. That intro of So What, it's just notoriously noisy. It's such a quiet intro, and the way they mastered it for whatever reason, it's just like really hard to get a copy that sounds really quiet at the intro of that song. So they also had Horace Silver, Silver Serenade original mono pressing, second pressing earless New York labels for $45. It just had one hairline that probably wouldn't sound. I thought that was a great deal, but I just got a really nice clean stereo earless with New York labels, so I passed on it, but otherwise that would have been a great deal. I would highly recommend Beautiful World Syndicate, small as it was. Looked like they had pretty good prices and really great selection. And then on to Long in the Tooth. Now, we went there and we didn't have a lot of time. The clerk seemed really busy, we'll say, so we didn't really have much conversation with him. They had a new arrival section that was just the usual annoying mixed, every genre, completely disorganized. Nothing in there. And then they had a massive jazz section, which was mostly Junk City. They had a copy of Soul Station, a first pressing for $1,200 on the wall. They had collectible stuff peppered through their giant jazz section. For example, original mono pressing of Horace Silver's Song for My Father. That was priced at $70, but the cover was trashed, which I thought was kind of high. The collectible records all had these like sales pitches written on the plastic sleeves in black marker. I don't know, maybe some people would like that. I mean, I kind of felt like they were trying to sell me a record that wasn't really that great for more than it's worth. I wasn't the hugest fan of Long in the Tooth, but we weren't there that long. We really didn't give it our full effort. So we might not have gotten the best impression of that store. It really cemented for me just how much I value when the store curates the records. I really don't feel like there's a need for there to be 5,000 jazz records in the store when 4,500 of them are like worthless to 90% of collectors. And it just makes our job that much harder. So, especially when they're not organized. I mean, get out of here if they're not organized. So we slept on it. And then now we're here in DC. We just hung out with Greg the Fish at Joe's Records. Big basement store. Had that unattended to, like, 50-year-old store vibe. Pretty much Junk City, for a lack of a better term. Also, probably overpriced for what it was. So that store was just, it was what it was. And we're on to the heavier hitters now, starting with HR Records. See you in a bit. Hello, jazz nerds. We are still in Washington, D.C. We are outside of HR Records right now. This place needs no introduction. They really don't even need a review. They were definitely the highest recommended, the most recommended store to us through our Instagram post where we were asking for recommendations of stores in the northeast of the U.S. or the mid-Atlantic. So, yeah, it's a great store. It's clean. It's organized. The owner's really cool. The prices are fair for the most part. It's fair to charge $20, $25 for OJCs nowadays, but they were doing that, and I guess that's par for the course now. They had a couple of sealed 83 Toshiba reissues of Blue Note Tad Jones records for $100 and like $130, and they might be worth that much now in the U.S., but I certainly am not paying that much. I mean, I'd rather get an open copy for $40 tops. But otherwise, they had some like second, third pressing stuff that was like very fairly priced, like a really clean like second pressing of Jimmy Smith Groovin' at Small's Paradise for $25. The record I ended up getting is in the car. I guess I forgot it, but you've all seen it before. It's kind of blue, but it is a stereo 2i that was extremely clean. And I mean, I have listened to dozens and dozens of 6i and 2i kind of blues in my day, looking for copies that play the beginning of So What quietly and the ballad Blue and Green quietly. And it is really hard to find a 6i or a 2i that will play those songs quietly. This one passed the test. Beautiful copy, $60. So that gives you a sense of the kind of deals that you can get here. They had some great wall pieces, definitely too rich for my blood. I think that's expected here. That's a standard here. You know, they had their wall, then they had their rare jazz new arrivals, then they had their rare jazz, and then they had their common jazz section. So rare jazz new arrivals was basically new arrivals for jazz. Rare jazz, that section was basically like, this stuff is pretty good to very good to excellent. And then the other section was just basically, it wasn't $1, $2 records. It was basically, I'd say $5 to $10 records. And I really didn't find anything close to stuff I was interested in that section. It was pretty big, and stuff was clean. It was organized. It was curated, but not for me. You know, walked out with one record. I would imagine if I was here on a different day, I'd walk out with a lot more. The HR experience was definitely a thumbs up, and we're headed over to Som Records now. See you in a bit. Greetings, everyone. Welcome back. We are still in Washington, D.C., and we just finished at a couple of new shops. We just went to Som Records here and joint custody over there. We didn't buy anything. They prompted a discussion with Greg about the state of record stores in the United States. You know, I went to a lot of record stores in the Midwest last summer. I'm going to a lot right now. I don't want to say that the Japanese stores are better, but the American stores consistently do not have the quality of flipping, is what I'll call it. They just do not have the quality of flipping that the Japanese stores have. The more I collect, I meet other collectors who have very wide taste, who are very non-discriminatory, who aren't very selective. They buy 10 to 20 records a week. And I'm sure they'd be really happy at these stores. I'm sure they'd love them. I'm not like that. I've got a very, very limited idea and range of things I want to buy on vinyl. It's well-known, popular stuff, but it's also very in demand, I think, most of it. You know, over the last few years, since actually meeting my wife, you know, I think she's really opened me up to other, you know, to being more flexible and trying different styles of jazz and different record labels, different artists. And, you know, I think I do that, but the stores that we have gone to are consistently just like they do not have what I'm looking for. And that happened last summer, that happened that's happening now. You know, I think that it's a coincidence that the Japanese reissue labels, their taste aligns with my taste. And so also that they took reissuing, doing quality reissues of the jazz I like more seriously than American reissue labels over the years. And I'm not playing that Music Matters game where they're $100, $200, $300 after market, after they're out of print. You know, I'm not doing that. These store clerks, these owners, they're very friendly people. A lot of times the stores are organized. I also want to accept that sometimes this is a matter of luck and chance. You know, if the store just got a great jazz collection, it'll seem like it's amazing. If they haven't gotten anything in a while, it's going to seem like it's a bust. You know, Greg, while we were walking, he did say, in all fairness, it's possible that right now is just not a good time for stores in general. And I think that there's probably some truth to that. The reason possibly being that the influx of jazz collectors into the hobby during COVID and after COVID has created that situation to a great extent. It has also created the situation where I consistently see records that I have bought in the past for much more, for let's just say more, than I paid for them 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 years ago. From these angles, I feel underwhelmed. In Philly and DC, we've bought one record. Yeah, they're just not hitting on my interests. You know, there's very little OJC stuff, very little, and when it's there, it's over $20. There's very little 70s Blue Note. There's a good amount of first pressings of vintage jazz records, but they're way out of my price range. Yeah, so this is sort of just a general take on Som, on joint custody, on all these stores. After a while, you get tired of flipping through records and not finding anything even close to something that you're interested in. And it's like, you know, the new arrivals are a complete mashup of all genres, and that can be frustrating. And then you go to the jazz section, and it's only stuff that didn't last long enough in the new arrival section or on the wall. And then there's like 500, 1,000, 2,000 of those records, and then you're looking through those and you're hoping to like randomly find something that snuck through the cracks for some strange reason. I would think that most collectors only have so much patience with that kind of activity. So, you know, we have Pittsburgh left, and we've got Bop Shop in Rochester, which I'm really psyched about. I don't want to get my hopes up too much. Last time I was there last summer, it was amazing. But as far as just the experience of sharing my honeymoon with my wife in a hobby that we both enjoy and love, we are having a blast. And we're very happy to share our experience here with you. We love making these videos. So yeah, we will see you guys on the flip side in Pittsburgh. Good afternoon from cloudy Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We just got here maybe about an hour ago. We just checked out Jerry's Records behind us, which was highly recommended. It was a gigantic store with tons of records, maybe hundreds of thousands of records. They had a massive jazz section that was unbelievably bad. I mean, like, absolutely zilch. I mean, nothing even close to what I'm used to being into. Joe's Records in DC was very similar. It was just like a sea of junk, but nobody recommended it. Again, I have to assume that either, you know, we're just not coming at the right time to these places, or I just don't understand what the purpose of record stores is. Flipping through the bins at a store like this feels like the purpose of going to a record store is to pick up table scraps. Like, that's it. You know, like you might find a 70s Horace Silver record, or you might find, I don't know, Milt Jackson on Atlantic that's clean. You know, not what we would probably call heat. Like, we're getting tired of flipping through junk. I mean, you know, it's just like there was just like rows and rows and rows and rows of stuff that we're just like, forget it. We're praying that we have better luck, and our trip to Pittsburgh was worth something. We're going to head over to the attic, and then we're going to go to Music to My Ear, and hope that we find something fun over at one of those stores. See you soon. Okay, everybody, still in cloudy, rainy Pittsburgh. We just got done at the attic, about a 15-minute drive from Jerry's. I thought it was pretty decent. I thought it was definitely better than Jerry's. They had the jazz mixed in, the new arrivals with all the rock, and it took like, you know, 100 flips to finally find a jazz record. But they had an OG George Wallington Jazz for the Carriage Trade for $250. It looked pretty clean. That looked like a pretty fair price. But the rest of their jazz was in this big, huge section, and it was all sideways, like shelves at home. And Akko hated that. I didn't mind so much, especially because it was all alphabetized. Every artist had a divider, and it was sprinkled. They had originals sprinkled in there. They had a couple 75th anniversary reissues that are pretty hard to get, actually. They had Bobby Hutcherson Happenings. They had 2 copies of that 75th anniversary for $22, so that's hard to get in any reissue format. I spent quite a while looking at the CDs. I ended up actually taking home 3 CDs. I got Harold Land in New York, OJC, Paul Chambers' Whims of Chambers, 90s CDP. I've been looking for Joe Henderson's Page 1 80s CD forever, and I finally got a clean one for $6. So, and they didn't charge me tax because I used cash. So that was okay. I mean, we got one more store here, and then we're done in Pittsburgh. So we'll see you in a bit. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. And we are at the final leg of our trip here. We just got done at Bop Shop Records, the dynamite jazz record store in Rochester, New York. Actually, it's an all-genre store, but they're just one of the best jazz stores in the world. Tom, the owner, wasn't here. My buddy Bill, His assistant was here and was terrific as always with us. Really helped us out a lot, was very kind and welcoming to my wife. So we got a lot of stuff. Got more than I did a year ago, but I would honestly say that in some ways I did better last year. The prices have gone up. They've been kind of raising their prices, and they've been doing it along with the market. Low supply, high demand, it makes sense to some extent. Some of their stuff is it's just too much. It's borderline way too much. But other stuff is just very reasonably priced. So, when you walk in, on the left, you got a huge wall with tons of awesome stuff on it. Right now, they've got a great wall, kind of pricey, based on especially what my buddies said. I showed them pictures of it with the prices. They got a copy of Lee Morgan's Cooker the jacket was basically VG. It was definitely a first pressing. That was $800. Mal 4 on, Prestige or New Jazz, that was $750. A couple other kind of wild ones were like Jackie McLean Right Now stereo, West Coast Liberty labels, like VG jacket, but like EX vinyl was like $100. They had other stuff on the wall where I was like, well, if that was cheaper, sure. They had Little Johnny Cole's West Coast label, excellent condition for $75. I feel like any West Coast Liberty copy for that much is a little high. They had a lot of great OJCs as usual in the bins. They don't really have a new arrivals section. They just kind of put the good stuff right in. It's a very tight, curated bin section for jazz. It doesn't take a lot of time to get through, and it's a lot of good stuff. We found several things in there. They also have select rare jazz, like 4 or 5 bins behind the counter that you can look at, and that's all stuff that's like 100 and up. They had an original Joe Henderson Page 1 stereo with the ear, and the vinyl looked really good, at least VG Plus. The cover was probably strong VG. They wanted $400 for that. They had a super clean copy of Prestige All Day Long for $800, which, to get it, it's going to be hard to find a copy that clean. I guess I could see why that was that much. We looked around. We went down in the basement. They got all this great stuff down there, like tons and tons of stuff that's just hasn't been looked at in a long time. There's a lot of OJCs down there. Sometimes they've got like 20... Like they got 2010 price tags on them, and you bring them upstairs and they update the price, so you don't really get an amazing deal on them. They had a lot of other stuff. They had like a clean earless mono, Song for My Father for $150. What did we get? We didn't get anything that cost that much. I've been getting more into the late 60s Blue Note stuff lately. I've kind of, done my rounds with all the other classic era Blue Note stuff, and I've been getting more into that later stuff, trying it out more. So this one's really great. Time for Tyner, McCoy Tyner. This is a blue label copy with the Van Gelder stamp. I didn't pay this record a lot of attention for a long time because the cover's so horrible in my opinion, but the music's great. Oh, and we were supposed to show you the bag, the beautiful Bop Shop Records tote bag. Thank you, Bill. My next late 60s Blue Note. This is actually an original with the Liberty labels, Liberty Stereo, Van Gelder. Elvin Jones putting it together. This is really good pianoless trio jazz that I've been getting more into lately. This record I've been into for a long time, but I haven't really ever found a beautiful original copy. Liberty labels, The Prisoner. Love this record. Now into the OJCs. Got into this recently. Never liked the cover, but there's a really killer version of Thelonious Monk's work on this. This was a good deal. It wasn't 2015 OJC prices, but Bill got confused. He thought we pulled this from downstairs, and he raised the price on it. This one, I'll tell you what, the price tag was $15, and we were like, oh great, it sounds great, it's beautiful. He thought we got it from the basement, and he raised it to $35. Then we were like, wait a second, Bill, that one was on the floor for that much, so he put the price back at $15. Found this one in the basement, making the changes. I actually had this specific OJC in mind when we started the trip, and I'm really glad I found it. There's a great version of Chasing the Bird on here, Charlie Parker tune. I've really warmed up to this album over time. That's the OJC. Very happy about finding that. This is a great lo-fi live jazz recording from the Cafe Bohemia in the late 50s with Randy Weston and Cecil Payne. And now we're going to look at the records that Akko picked out. This is an original. This is an extremely hard to find original pressing of James Clay on Riverside. And we got the stereo, which is a true stereo. There's only 2 issues of this ever on vinyl. The original mono and the original stereo. We ended up with the original stereo. This record here, they had a couple copies of. We found this one in the basement, Harold Land. Akko is a big fan of vibes and electric piano. And this record has both. We were listening to that. It's kind of good, moody 70s stuff. And this last one here, she was really excited to find. For the first time, she decided that this is a terrific album. I haven't even listened to it. Hal Galper with Tony Williams and Cecil McBee. Looks very interesting. Terumasa Hino. Was talking to Bill after we checked out about the state of the game. Yeah, it's slim pickings right now in the jazz game. I mean, you know, Bill agrees with me. He feels like during COVID, things got really crazy with people buying stuff, and now people are just holding on to stuff, and it's really tough to find like really good stuff for really good prices. Hopefully that'll change over time, but this was certainly the crown jewel of store experiences we've had. Obviously, you know, we bought maybe 1-2 records at other stores we went to. Most stores we didn't buy anything. So this was great. We are going to wrap up, actually, even though we're going home tonight, we're going to wrap up on Saturday in 2 days at Hudson Valley Vinyl, and we'll do a video there, and then that will be the end of everything, and then we'll put the video together for you all to see. Okay, so we actually got back home 2 days ago from our tour, and we decided, well, what the heck, let's do an encore here in Beacon, New York at Hudson Valley Vinyl. I've talked about this store a lot over my years online collecting jazz. It's owned by a very good friend of mine, Chris, and you know, it's kind of impossible for me to give this store an unbiased review, but suffice to say it's a great store. I mean, really, I think the things that I would say, regardless of whether Chris was a good old friend of mine or not, is that he's always graded conservatively and he's always had fair prices. I think that is objectively true about this establishment. I rarely leave here without a record. It's kind of a small store, but it's also very curated and very tight curated selection. On this occasion, he said they recently gotten a lot of jazz in. I would say that they did. It looked like they did. I bought 2 records, and they were both very obscure for my normal taste. So the first one I got basically because, largely due to the influence of my wife. You know, she's really gotten me to like loosen up about collecting and try different things that I might not normally think that I want to get at first glance. The first thing here that I thought I'd give a try was, it's actually on Cobblestone Records, which I'm not very familiar with. The date is 1972. This is Cedar Walton and Hank Mobley, and also Sam Jones, Billy Higgins, a fellow named Charles Davis. It piqued my interest. I know she likes Cedar Walton. I wasn't aware until I started listening. The first side sounds like Cedar Walton is playing Fender Rhodes, which is really cool. And the second side is actually a nice throwback to hard bop with Cedar Walton just playing acoustic piano. The next one I picked out was one that Akko used to have as a Japanese pressing, and she said that she liked it, but got rid of it because she was thinning things out, and it was a compilation of sorts, a mashup of 2 different recording sessions. But you know, I saw the lineups and I thought I'd give it a try. It looked good, and then when I finally got to listening to it, it sounded great. I was really impressed with how it sounded. And this is, I guess it's called The Best of Birdland on Roulette, and it's kind of weird because According to Discogs, it actually was not, neither side was recorded at Birdland. I think the second side, which is kind of like a Jazz Messengers-y kind of thing with Lee Morgan and Wayne Shorter, Timmons, but then Art Taylor on drums. That's kind of interesting. The Discogs says that might have been recorded at Capitol Studios. The A side features Coltrane and a quartet with Tyner and Steve Davis, but also Billy Higgins on drums. So some very interesting combinations on this record. And that was apparently recorded by United Artists. Kind of a weird thing, but it's mono. It's a second pressing from '63. I think that the original was '62, and it cooks. It sounded really good, so I thought I'd give it a shot. Akko picked out these here, Roy Ayers Virgo Vibes. I'm really not super familiar with Roy Ayers, other than this little bit of stuff I've heard of his from the 1970s. But this is clearly an earlier date from the 60s, with Joe Henderson on tenor on one side and Harold Land on the other side. The last one here, pretty obscure for my taste, Ted Curson, Typical Ted. This was the bargain buy for us today here. The label is Trident. I'm not familiar with that label, but she played me a little of this, and I thought it was really, really good. And so this concludes our record store road trip. Hudson Valley Vinyl, as always, is highly recommended. And thanks for watching, and we hope that we helped you out with some recommendations and some information about all these stores.